You're listening to the Carry On Friends Podcast, episode 43. Welcome to the Carry On Friends Podcast, where you'll be inspired and empowered to do amazing things in your personal lives, career, business, and community. With your host, Carrie Ann Reed Brown. Hello, everyone. This is Carrie Ann. Welcome to another episode of the Carry On Friends Podcast. As always, I'm excited that you're listening. Today's guest is Candace Thompson. She is a dance and fitness entrepreneur, and she goes into her experiences as an entrepreneur in that space. And one thing I did realize, you were talking throughout the interview and she mentioned WIADCA. And around the time we recorded the interview was the lead up to Labor Day. And WIADCA is the organization that puts on the Labor Day parade here in New York City. There's a lot of events that lead up to the parade, the final parade on Monday, Labor Day Monday. There's usually Kiddies Carnival, different events and concerts and a whole bunch of other things that lead up to the event. So she was volunteering, or she was doing stage management. She was doing a lot of things leading up to that. And so I apologize for not explaining that throughout the episode, but that is when she refers to WIADCA and running and performing, or me saying that she has to go, is because, you know, there are different things going on and she's off and running. But I'm excited that you are listening to this episode, because then, you know, we don't want to have the impression that, you know, one form of entrepreneurship is better than the other. Everyone have their place in the entrepreneurship ecosystem, and being a cultural entrepreneur, a creative performing entrepreneur, is so important to the preservation of culture, because while we no longer tell stories, oral stories, grandma telling grandkid and stories carry down, this is the way that our history and our culture will survive through the performing arts and through these other areas. So really excited that she's on, and I'm glad that you're listening, and I hope that this inspires you to support, entrepreneurs who go and make it their life's work and mission to create art and to preserve art and culture. So without further ado, here's my interview with Candace. I'm excited about my guest today, Candace Thompson of Dance Caribbean Collective and Candace Dance Fitness. Candace, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm really, really excited to be here. I follow the podcast as well, so I'm happy to be on it.
Oh, awesome. So unless you for those who can't pick up the accent, tell everyone which country you're representing.
Big up Trinidad and Tobago, of course, CTNT.
Trinidad and Tobago, of course. All right, that was my best Trini accent, I know.
Not too bad.
All right. So why don't you tell the audience, about you and, both initiatives that you have, so we could get a, better idea of, what you got going on.
Okay. So I'll start with Candace Dance Fitness. So primarily I'm a dancer, personal trainer, fitness instructor, and then I also teach dance and movement in after school programs. Mm-hmm. So Candace Dance and Fitness is mainly where I channel like any fitness teaching or personal training clients. Like the way that I organize all of that is Candace Dance and Fitness. So it's like an amalgamation of all of my skills in movement and fitness training that I put together there. And Dance Caribbean Collective is newer. We started it about 2 years ago, and it's an organization that seeks to bring together Caribbean dancers and choreographers, or people who make work about the Caribbean, and giving us a platform so that our work could get more visibility. So we produce events, performances, we host workshops, and our aim is really to try to get our work to reach the community so that they could see, large scale productions that represent who they are. Just as people go to see Alvin Ailey or Camille Brown or the ballet, we want people to know that there are stage performances in dance that focus on Caribbean issues and stories.
Okay. So, there's so much that you just said there, but the thing that stuck out to me, you said more visibility. Why is there not enough visibility? Why do you think that is, that Caribbean dancers, choreographers or whatever? Is it the type of dance you do? Because some people might say, well, we see everybody dancing, dancehall and soca. What exactly isn't visible?
Right. I think that, there's dance is so much a part of our culture, right? So, we people have parties, they dance in the living room, and then people put up all these soca videos and music videos. Like, those are the kinds of things that are like circulated in mainstream, like Caribbean consumption of entertainment, right?
Right.
Whereas a lot of the choreographers that are in the collective, we do more contemporary or modern based work that has a Caribbean influence, tells a Caribbean narrative, is influenced by our Caribbean backgrounds. And, that's, again, talking about, companies like Avenali, like New York City Ballet, like big, large-scale productions, like when you send your kids to go and take back modern and jazz class, right? And the big recital at the end, like, this is our big recital, but except that, we're professionals that are doing this. But there isn't, like, I guess, a cultural narrative behind that. So it's sometimes hard to explain to people exactly what we do and why we do it. And then for us to also get that, we're not a part of a larger story yet. So it's like I keep having to explain, like, exactly what I do, why I do it, how we do it, and getting the word out. I feel like with things that aren't parties or aren't big fetes, it's harder to sell to Caribbean audience. But if they know, people are excited. But it's just, how do you get the message out?
Right. I mean, I definitely understand, because we talk about it even with the podcast and, different things, as you are familiar with Michaela and myself, and other bloggers. It's almost as if it's not a fit, and if it's not some comedian or something, and nothing is wrong with them, it's just usually very harder to get the audience or people as excited about it. So I definitely understand. Why did you create the collective, and, how do you make it a business and have it thrive, given that, support may not be at the level you want it? So was it started as a collective, so, your individual efforts could be balled into one so you can continue to grow the movement?
Yes and no. So we started out with me having the idea, bouncing it around off a few people, and people being excited and interested. And I had a meeting with maybe like 10 or so of my colleagues or other people that I knew, and we talked about, things that we felt that were working against us in the field. And the idea was, again, so if we were united, then our work could go further if we're all working together. And in terms of the business side of things, our main event is something called New Traditions Festival, which is a dance festival, and we present Caribbean choreographers for 2 days.
Right.
And it's, if anyone knows about producing stage shows, stage events, concert dance works, it's expensive. So part of the business model then becomes fundraising. So we spend a large chunk of the season raising money. So we're writing grants, we're doing crowdfunding, we're doing workshops to earn income. We're asking for business sponsorships. So the way that a lot of these things work, especially if there's a large show attached to it, is that fundraising has to happen for the show to take place.
All right. So then the question is, why go into this field of business then, if it's so challenging? Because, if we let the general consumption of blogger news, entrepreneurial news, you go into business to make money, and you make money, you make money. So why go into this? Why do this if you have to go through such a process just to raise money and to make money? Why go into this, and why is it important that you do this?
That's a very good question. Truly, you go into this because you love it.
Yeah.
It's, a lot of us, the choreographers who are part of the collective, we've all gone to dance school. Most of us have degrees in dance. We've dreamed or have, experienced careers as dance performers in other companies on some level. Some of us still dance full time. Some of us don't. People are, public school teachers, or they teach in after school like I do. So a lot of us have varied career choices that aren't only about performing and choreographing. But because we've invested so much time into this craft, we have to show it. Like, there's no other way around it. It's like, if we're not producing work and showing work, then it's like, part of our life is missing.
Yeah.
And two, most of us are also really, really passionate about telling the stories of our culture, about where we're from, about our heritage. And I guess the thing that drove me to really do it was, if we wait for people to give us a chance, or to give us, a little 10 minutes in a show, or for them to give us the grant so that we could do be a part of their thing. You know what I mean? If we always wait for someone's opportunity, it's never going to come in the way that we want it to.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to be bound by their restrictions, the way that they see our work, the goals of their particular festival.
Mm-hmm.
And they may not align with the way that we need to show our work for our culture.
Right.
So, it's taking ownership over the fact that if this is really important and if we want to be able to tell our stories in our own way, then we have to produce ourselves, or else, we're always going to be filtered through somebody else's lens.
I absolutely understand that. I couldn't have said that better, because, it's not just from the outside, no, it's also within, right? Caribbean people, sometimes we wait on, other people to do things. And you're like, no, we have to do it ourselves, because, we have a need. And, it's almost like as if everyone's looking at each other and, like, you started. No, you started. Somebody has to start it, right?
Exactly.
And it's important to create the platform, and then once you start it, everybody watching and waiting, we say, I'm not going to do nothing yet because I don't know if they're going to last or something. So you kind of have to prove yourself. So you go through these motions, but you do it because of love of culture, because, one of the things that I've been realizing from, just different projects I've been working on, a common theme or thread that I've been seeing is cultural survival. I really feel like we're fighting for survival, and not in a way that it's dying, because, let's talk about Drake. Let's talk about, they call Drake a culture vulture. I disagree. Drake has just been very influenced by us to the point where people think it's a Drake-ism, where it's a Jamaicanism, and it's not to say that we're selfish. It's just that our culture is so mainstream and so sheer that people no longer realize that this is Jamaican language. This is from Trinidad, or this is from Guyana. No one is like the origin is lost. And that is what I feel like. It's a survival thing, right? So I really appreciate what you're doing. So then my next question is, how is the next generation coming up? Because you are doing this, taking over from a generation that was probably stronger. In Jamaica, we had Rex Nettleforth. And so, you are the next generation, after him, because, I don't know of anything else. So what about the generation after that? Is it there? What's happening? Because again, it is about the preservation of culture, and that drives the business industry. So how is that working or looking?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And I feel like things are surviving in different ways. Like, for instance, I've been, as I said, I was stage managing for the Wyatka events for the last few days. What happened yesterday was something called the Stay in School concert. And they let school groups, dance groups perform. And, there were a lot of dance groups that I saw perform that I had never heard of. And most of them were playing, had soca, choreographies, had, you know what I mean? So I feel like there is interest, obviously, among the younger generation to do things that are responding to, like our music. But in terms of them going back to, think about where it's coming from, I don't know if that's happening. Because, I think that young people are really, really creative if you leave them alone, right? So they'll be like, oh, I'll make up my own routine. I want to do this. I want to do that. But in terms of them knowing the legacy that they're coming from or they're riding on, I feel like some of that information is lost.
It's lost, yeah.
So I taught a workshop at a friend's. So part of New Traditions Festival, we worked with a few schools to get rehearsal space. And in exchange, we offered a workshop based on the work that we were doing, the dances that we were doing. So I did one on soca, contemporary movement. And so I'm talking to them about soca. And I was like, oh, so do you all know what calypso is? And nobody in the room knew what calypso was. And these are high school kids.
Yeah. What was interesting, though, to us, it's surprising, right? So I appear on a show, Sip and Chat. And apparently in Jamaica, we have school challenge quiz. And one of the questions on school challenge quiz was, where was dancehall or reggae started? And in Jamaica, Candace, somebody said Trinidad and Tobago. I was like, what in the world is happening?
Yeah.
And I couldn't believe it. But then what you just said also confirmed a prior conversation that I had with Andrew Clark of Brata Productions.
Okay.
And he went to Africa years ago, and he was singing this song that I knew from primary school. And it's a song that we used to play with Stones. And
Manuel Road.
Manuel Road, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so the kids there was like, no, that's not how the song go. They only know the TOK version of
Yes.
that song.
Right.
Right. They didn't know the Manuel Road song, where it came from and the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really interesting, and it's just like, wow, I really applaud and commend you, Andrew. There's a few other people that are also in the space, obviously Shelley Worrell, Caribbean, and a lot of other people who really have their work cut out for them, but for people like me, I find it really, really valuable. And it's a matter of how do we get the message out that it's viable.
Yeah.
But also that there is money to be made from our culture, because quite honestly, everyone else is profiting from our culture. So why can't we?
Mm-hmm.
So what are your thoughts on the business of Caribbean culture being mainstream and its appropriation or misappropriation, whichever way you'd like to spin it? What are your thoughts on that? And what do you think we should do, or the industry should grow? Because it's obviously in an infancy on the Caribbean side. On the mainstream side is a matter of who can do the dance better and say a little patois and it don't sound too hard.
Right. I don't know. I have so many thoughts about that. You talk about Drake and all this, and I'm thinking about the Grammys, the VMAs, where like 3 or 4 of the artists all sample dancehall.
Yeah.
And for some of us, we're so excited, like, oh, and then, Rihanna did this whole scene and it was amazing. But at the same time, like part of Beyonce's thing, and she drops this dancehall sample, and I'm just like, really, Beyonce, you need to do it too.
Yeah.
It's like I feel like we're the cool kids right now.
Yeah.
And, in a way it makes you feel proud. You're like, oh yeah, that's my thing. But it's like, who is the person whose story is similar to mine that gets to benefit?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So, like Rihanna, we happy for Rihanna, because we know she's from Barbados. She never forgot where she's from, always bringing up Barbados. But, for the other folks who are obviously making money off of this, and, supposedly they're saying that they pay the people, Beanie Man came out and said that he got paid for the sample that he did, that Drake borrowed from him. So he don't understand why Vegas vex. And, so people behind the scenes are getting paid. But what happens is that the story, as you were saying before, who gets written down in the history books for starting the trend, right? And then you get these new things that 10, 20 years from now, people are going to be like, yeah, Drake was so iconic, blah, blah, blah. But it's like, well, where did it really come from? But in terms of, I guess, us benefiting, and this is where I get torn, because basically the way that we benefit is figuring out how do we teach the inherent cultural nuances of these forms in a way that a non-local audience can understand and glean value from. So it's like we have to figure out exactly what the heart of what the thing is, or so the heart of the dancehall step, what's inspiring it, the heart of the soca step, what's inspiring it, and then format it in a way that the general public can consume, and in the process figure out how we can also benefit from it, because that whole process takes work. It's like you doing research, you finding the right music, you planning your class, all of that takes a lot of work that people don't realize because it looks so easy and we're having fun. And so it's about figuring out basically what the cultural product is, and then setting up a model that can support it financially.
I can honestly say that, for you doing this business and the others in this field, it's so needed, because, as you mature, you want different types of forms of entertainment. And so that's the value. Going back a little bit, now that you're in the space, you recognize the challenge in the space. What's one thing you wish you knew before you got into this business? You probably said them already, but, what's one thing that you wish you knew before you started, whether it's the collective or the dance fitness?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say that I think because the things that I'm trying to do, especially with Dance Caribbean Collective, I feel like they haven't necessarily been done in this way and not through our cultural lens, and at least not in my generation. So I felt like there was no real rubric for me to follow. But I think I wish that I knew that even if I had people behind me and supporting me, that there are just so many pieces that move at the same time. And so that maybe if starting smaller is probably more wise.
Wow. Yeah.
Even if, there is something to be gained from, just deciding to do a large scale and figuring it out, which is what, I've done. But I think I wish that I knew that starting smaller doesn't necessarily mean that you're not gaining the momentum that you think you are.
I love that.
Yeah, when you start big, it's just that it seems simple, but there are just so many moving parts that happen at one time.
There's a lot of value in starting very small. You're able to make mistakes. No one sees it as much as if you're bigger, all these little things. So yeah, totally get this. So you spoke about the challenge with getting the audience on board. So how do you stay motivated when, because every business has its ebbs and, flows and, things aren't always busy. So what do you do to stay motivated and inspired when things are not as busy? It's not your busy season.
I've struggled with this, especially since, I feel like I'm still on the uptake. So getting to the top of the mountain, struggling, I'm not where I want to be. So a lot of it is new, but what I've had to do is I feel like sometimes just dive into the heart of my culture, and sometimes outside of, I'm primarily a dance person. So it's dropping myself into something totally different, something where I don't know so much, but it's still culturally, stimulating.
Right.
So, maybe it's reading a book by a Caribbean author. Maybe it's listening to your podcast. Maybe it's, taking a trip home and laying on my mom's couch for 2 days and talking to my grandmother. Maybe it's me volunteering for the Wyatka events. Just things that take me out of my, I wouldn't say comfort zone, but out of the realm of what I do with as my life, are the things that I do to replenish. Because I feel like if I stay focused on only the things that I'm in charge of, that I get depleted really quickly.
Yeah. And there's a value in the pause, the pause to reconnect, because even in the things that you said you did, those are inherently things that are part of the culture, and it allows you to fall in love again. Because I find that when I keep pushing, going, sometimes you're like, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm so tired. But it's like reconnecting with that why you started the collective and the fitness, and it's not in an indirect way, not very directly, why did I do this? But the times with grandma and stuff, my relationship with my grandmother is part of why I'm an entrepreneur, because they always had a business, but they didn't say I have a business. They just had to, it was survival. So, they had to do it. So I totally get that. So, all right. What's the best piece of advice you've ever received, whether it was, starting any of your business or personal life, that you feel like would be valuable to someone listening?
I would say, I don't know if this was advice, but this is just the way that I was raised. My mother's always big on saying thank you. So expressing gratitude, even for little things. So growing up, we would always give presents to my teachers at the end of the term. If somebody helped me on a project and I did well, she'd, send them a card or something. So I guess growing up, saying thank you and being gracious was a really, really big deal in my household. And I feel like it's helped me to maintain relationships and make people open to helping you more. Yeah. And I've also, being around doing these kinds of things, I've seen how it works on the other side when you extend yourself to people and then they just sort of walk away, forget you. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I would say just having gratitude.
I want to just pivot a little bit going back. What do you say to the person who decides that I really love my culture, and, whether it's dance or whether it's, some other kind of creative performing arts, singing, something, and I love my culture so much that I want to start my own business as it pertains to being a cultural entrepreneur. What do you say to that person?
Gotcha. Yeah. I'd say, well, they need a team. Honestly, even if it's not people who are working for them, but they need people who are like-minded around them. So, you need friends who you could bounce ideas off of, friends who are also, entrepreneurs that you could be like, hey, I'm thinking about this thing. What do you think? And then they'll be like, oh, well, that sounds good, but, you should check out this resource. They might be able to, give you a few pointers on what you should do next. So I would say just have people around you that you trust to just, be your sounding boards. And then also people who are as motivated as you, who can, keep you on your path,
right,
but that are also seeking and gaining that kind of entrepreneurial information. Because I feel like that's literally been the way that I've been able to do a lot of the things that I've done, is because of the people that are surrounding me and that I'm around.
Right. A couple episodes ago I did with Paul Brunson, and every time I have these conversations, it comes up. It's the connections that you have and the value of the people who you constantly communicate with, where you said, you encourage them to have entrepreneurial friends because you're leveraging their network and the knowledge from their network, through them in order to be a cultural or a creative entrepreneur. Because if we watch TV or we read a lot of everything else, it's not, it's easy to see why people don't do this, because it's not the fast, easy way to make money if it's not a Hollywood blockbuster thing, but it does have its value. And it's the value is, you do it out of sheer love, and then it's a matter of scaling for success. So you already said start small, which is key.
I would also say one more thing about that. I would say also, putting yourself with, like interning, working under someone else who's working in a similar way. Because I did probably the first, out of college, probably my first 6 years, 7 maybe. I've worked as an assistant, as a coordinator, as a, administrative assistant to a few people who were choreographers, dancers, teachers. And I was able to learn a lot from working under them. Do you know what I mean? So like they made all the decisions. They came up with the concept. I was just the one, trying to like get logistically, make all the things happen. But, being in that position where my job was just to like do, but I could learn and see how things worked.
Right.
So I would say just putting yourself in a position where you could learn, even if it's,
No, but that's a good point, because for every business, there is an administrative back end point, and then there's the product or the service that you're delivering. And, what you did was smart in terms of understanding what it took administratively to get your product or service out to people. So yes, that is good. Experience doesn't always mean in doing the actual work. It could also be about seeing how the work is done, the business behind the work is done. So I think that was very smart. Is it easier to collaborate with someone as opposed to, especially since you said that this culture of entrepreneurship is challenging, is it easier to collaborate with someone else that already has something in place or that is within the culture versus starting something new? I'm asking since you said that, it's really hard. So the collective is started just to kind of pool your efforts together. So if someone is looking to get into this, should they look to join a collective first before trying to start up a whole new thing?
Right. Yes and no. It depends.
Yeah.
I feel, I'm big on partnerships. So, we've done a few collaborative events, but, I work closely with other organizations, even if we don't necessarily program things together. The thing with, collectives and partnerships is that they take a lot of time because you need to be on the same page with the person. Your goals need to match up. You need to have the same sort of values or else it doesn't work really. So because it is so hard, and because there's so much work that has to go into these events that don't necessarily financially make back the effort and the time that you put into them, collaborating is an easier way, in theory, to get some of these things done. But it takes that other side of seeing eye to eye. So in theory, it is easier, but only if I feel like those values and those bonds and relationships are in place.
Absolutely. I do a lot of collaboration because, one on can't clap, as we say in Jamaica, right?
Exactly.
So, pooling efforts and, it gives a bigger impact and it just helps. Being an entrepreneur is a lonely place at times. And, sometimes you're really, especially like we said before, it's not the sexy, thing, and it's not party and stuff. It's like, it's not something people readily gravitate to. It takes time. So having the support of like-minded individuals, really helps. All right, I'm going to move into some fun questions.
Okay.
So if you were to have a superpower, which superpower do you wish you had and why?
I wish that I didn't think all of my thoughts at the same time. I don't know if that's a superpower, but I feel like maybe I wish that I had narrower vision. You know what I mean? Like the blinkers on, or maybe maybe the superpower would then be being able to hone in on one stream of consciousness.
No, no. All right. So we're going to change that, people. We're not. She don't want to be one thing. I tell you the superpower you want, right? I'm gonna tell you the superpower that you want. So, have you ever watched Harry Potter?
Here and there, I don't think I've ever seen an entire movie, but I've seen some of it. Yes.
So there's this thing in Harry Potter where Dumbledore, the professor, he could use his wand and take all his thoughts out and put it in a bowl.
Oh, Lord, yes.
Right. So you want to take out all these thoughts that are like clogging your brain, put them in a bowl and focus on the one you want. But your thoughts are still there. You just want to.
Yep. That's exactly the one.
You want to be able to see them because I get it. Like, you know, when you're an entrepreneur, a solopreneur, whatever you want to call yourself, you have so many competing ideas and thoughts and you feel like you're all over the place and your focus is like split and you're like, I just want to focus on one thing and do it. But it's just that creative juice that's going, and because you know you have limited resource to execute, you have to try to figure out which one it is. So yeah, man, you want the pensive from the Harry Potter series,
yes.
So you can't just
now I know.
Yes, put everything out. So yes, so she wished she had the Dumbledore superpower to just pull all of her thoughts and memories or whatever into a bowl and just pick out the ones she wants to focus on.
Yep.
Yes, I say that all the time. Actually, at work, my coworkers, they're like, Carrie Ann, you got too many tabs open because.
Right, the telltale sign.
Yes, too many tabs open. Not only physical computer tabs, but mental tabs. They see it all the time. It's like my brain is like going. Yeah. So yeah, I definitely.
That's how they tell you. Yeah, that's cute.
All right. So you mentioned earlier that you read books by your favorite Caribbean author. Who is your favorite Caribbean author?
The book that I'm reading right now. Hold on, where is it? I'm trying to find it. I'm reading like 3 books at once.
Yeah,
but
me too.
I'm reading Make a Movie. It's just a movie. It's a Trinidadian author, and his name is slipping my mind right now.
You have to tell me because I love that was one of the things. The early versions of the blog, I read a lot of books. I still read a lot of books by Caribbean authors. It's so important to me, and I was very, very excited to meet my favorite Trinidadian author. Her name is Elizabeth Nunez. And her book that came out the other day, Even in Paradise, I absolutely love it. And she's just a really great author. She used to teach at Medgar Evers. She now teaches at Hunter College. So I definitely, I'll look up the title of the book. But what was it called again?
I just found it. Earl Lovelace.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Yes.
So
I know Mr. Lovelace.
It's just a movie, so that I'm like a third through that one.
Awesome.
And then I'm reading, what is sort of I guess this is technically still work, Caribbean Dance from Abukua to Zouk, edited by a woman named Susanna Sloat. So it's a bunch of essays on traditional dance forms from the Caribbean. So those are the 2.
All right. I know that I don't want to keep you any longer because I know it's the busy weekend. So any final word to our community of friends before we go on being a creative or performing arts entrepreneur or just anything in general in culture? I
think my final thoughts are that the things that we enjoy about our culture, I feel like most of us should question ourselves about what we're giving back to it. Especially, like people like me, like it's sort of inherent, right? Because we're performers. But, the average Joe that has a regular job and just comes home and, consumes or lives this culture. It's like the things that you're enjoying, what can you do to keep it going? Right. I feel like that's a good question for our audience.
What can we do to keep it going? Yes. And it's supporting the events. Mm-hmm. We'll definitely make sure that we get your information on your social channels and all that, in the show notes. But, and we didn't even share that. But before we go, just share where, people can find you, your website, Instagram, Twitter, all that good stuff.
Yes. So my website is CandaceDanceFitness.com. Candace spelled with an A, and dancecaribbeancollective.com. So, Candace Dance and Fitness is all about me and my performing and my personal training. And if you want to hire me, and Dance Caribbean Collective has the programs that we're interested in and about the events that we've produced. And on Instagram, I'm Can Dance Fit and Dance Caribbean Collective. And I also have another Instagram called Contemporary Carib where I post dance photos mainly.
Okay. Yeah. Awesome. All right, Candace, thank you so much for being on the show. It's a pleasure, and I'm so excited. I'm hoping that you have a fabulous rest of this long weekend, and as always, walk good. Okay, friends, I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Carry On Friends podcast. For a recap of this episode and other great articles, please visit the blog at www.carryonfriends.com. That's CarryonFriends.com. The Carry On Friends podcast is produced by Breadfruit Media, and new episodes are available every other Tuesday morning. You can listen to the podcast on the website, carryonfriends.com, or you can listen on Apple Podcasts,